everybody, this is Mike with On Point Preparedness. I've got a special video for you today. I've got Steve Poplar from Poplar Preparedness here. He was actually coming down here to do some visitation of the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum. And so we've actually been communicating for a while back and forth. Again, he's got his Poplar Preparedness channel, but one of the other reasons why we've gotten to know each other is, we're both faith-based, we're both Christians, and so in addition to his Poplar Preparedness channel, he's also got two ministry-oriented channels called Bold Faith Bible, which you can talk a little bit about that in terms of what you do there, and your iMissions, right? iMissions channel.
Yeah.
So he's got, if you're already subscribed to Steve, he's a busy guy. I am always amazed at the amount of content you can put out, and it's always very unique content. Again, both keeping everyone abreast on what's going on in the world on the Poplar Preparedness side of things. And it's unique because I hear news from you that's different than everyone else. We actually went out to breakfast. We talked a little bit about this, where a lot of the channels, a lot of the truth-oriented channels in terms of what's going on in the world, a lot of it is recycled news, right? So you go on Zero Hedge, you go on Drudge, and there's stories are just circulated over and over, and everyone gives like their own little spin on it. But Steve, you've done like an excellent job in terms of finding like really relevant, critical information in terms of like what's happening on in the world that I haven't seen a lot of people do. So I've always appreciated Steve's channel to keep me aware of what's going on secularly in the world, but then also keeping it real, keeping it faith-based by always leading people to his Bold Faith Bible channel, and then the iMissions channel you're just looking to get up. So. Yeah. Without me just keep on blabbing away, Steve, you just want to give like a quick introduction to let people know your channels and sort of what you're about.
Yeah, I'm an elder at my church. So I went to Bible Institute and went to seminary, and I'm an ordained minister. What do I minister at other than my church as a lay leader? I really felt that God was leading me to do ministry on YouTube. And that's one of those things where I think we're all just trying to figure out, what does ministry on YouTube even look like? and I kind of stumbled onto it early on that I could produce Bible content, but nobody would watch it. Until YouTube can figure out who wants to watch your content, you just languish in anonymity, right? Yeah. Nobody knows you exist. And until you can kind of break through somehow and kind of capture people's interest and excitement, that really brings you to a much larger audience. And so honestly, my Poplar Preparedness was kind of an offhand, I want to talk a little about some news. I probably shouldn't do that on the Bible channel or the Missions channel, so I'll start up a new channel. And I did that, and it just blew up. And people really kind of latched on to that. They realize in the world, people just realize across the world that things are happening. Historical things are happening in our lifetime. And so I've really kind of devoted the channel to just helping people be more informed, but then also to just, I really try to talk people off the ledge. Try to talk people from, putting faith in what they're doing and the things that they can't even do anything about, to putting their faith into Christ, ultimately. I mean, that's what my channel is about. I actually steer away from talking about religion and God like all the time on my main channel, because I want to draw people in. Right. I want people who aren't comfortable with God talk all the time to come to my channel, so that when I do talk about my faith and talk about God, I'm talking to people that don't know God. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, that's, you talked about how your channel isn't very evangelistic oriented. Not that you don't share the gospel, but that you realize that most of your audience are already Christians or are people who are watching other Christian channels. Whereas I really focus on trying to get people in the door into my Poplar Preparedness who don't know Jesus, so that I can have the opportunity to share the gospel with them. And then hopefully help them over to my Bible channel, where we're doing more verse-by-verse Bible studies to get new believers and people who aren't even really believers to start studying the Bible. And I've been tremendously blessed to see quite a few people over on my Bold Faith Bible channel starting to study the Bible for the first time, really, which is just an awesome, amazing privilege.
Right.
So I mean, that's what I'm all about.
Yeah.
I want people to be more prepared. I think it's crazy not to be prepared in these tough times, but ultimately that preparation needs to be spiritual first.
Right.
If God is not with you, it doesn't matter how much food you've stocked.
Amen. Yep. I mean, there's so many stories in the Bible where man has tried to rely on his own efforts, or when he doesn't think that his own efforts are sufficient, he runs to another man. Like I was just reading through Kings, and some of the other kings between the king of Judah and the king of Israel, and there's prophets that maybe Ahab, or I think it was Ahab. Ahab wanted to go to war against Syria, and the prophets were telling him no. But then he went and sought out, to ally with the king of Judah, and ultimately, the Lord was not with him.
Yeah.
And if you read that story, it's just
the only blessing he got was because the king of Judah was there.
Yeah.
He dragged a Christian into it to kind of use it as like a human shield.
Sure. And then it's funny because in that story, he dressed up the king of Judah in a robe to pretend like he was King Ahab, and he actually got spared. And the Scripture says that there was a random arrow that pierced King Ahab, like in between his breastplate. So it's just always, that's just one of many stories in the Bible, and so many more where man has tried to just run after things of this world or people of this world to help them, and the Lord's like, nope. Like, you think that there's solace back in Egypt? You'll be met with the sword and famine and everything else. And so, the times that we're in, I mean, they're pretty bad. It's no lie. I mean, that's why a lot of people are watching your channel, my channel. We're just trying to get ahead of like what's going to happen next. And
there's so many lies. I think that's what really I hear more than anything else, is that they feel like they're not getting the news, and they're not getting information that is true from the normal traditional news sources. And so that's why they're on YouTube, is like they're just trying to find out what's actually happening. And unfortunately and fortunately on YouTube, everything's unfiltered. So you get your crazy all the way to your propaganda, right?
Right.
And everything in between. And so there's this there's those who are trying their best to present truth. But then there's all the different perspectives, and there's just too many voices in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
But at least they can hear facts, and that's why I really try focusing in on facts and hard information, as opposed to as much commentary. But
yeah, and just to your prior point, we, with your channel being more evangelistic, we want people to just come into sort of a type of relationship as much as you can, with an online YouTube channel. And just say, you know what, these are two earnest type of guys that are just looking out for us, and maybe he does have something good to say, from the faith-based aspect of it. So, that's our prayer for both of our channels. One, that people would come to know Christ, and definitely go to Steve's Bold Faith Bible channel, especially for the ones that he has residently already on his Poplar Preparedness. But then, once you come into the faith, and a lot of things that I've been talking about on my channel, I had no idea just how much deceptions were actually rampant throughout the church. And so I think that's also something that I personally have been combating, and I've done a lot on this channel, is people are scattering to and fro to find out what is truth. And the unfortunate thing is we already know MSM is already full of a bunch of hogwash. But then when they start to go online, who knows what you're who knows what you're going to find online? I mean, there's some people that are just fear mongering, and they're looking for views and things like that, and they get you scared and panicked. I think that's something you've done on your channel that's been really good, is to steer people away from being afraid. Like, just be calm about this, do what you can, but root your faith.
We need to be motivated by fear, to action. But once we're fearful, but we have no action to take, that's when you need to put down the fear and say, I can't do anything about this. So that's why, when you look at like national politics, and you look at national leaders and international things, it's like what really can we do about this, and what can you do about this? And the answer is, for a lot of stuff, is absolutely nothing. All you can really do is just be aware of it and then you need to put it down and move on with your life.
Yeah.
So,
Because I know, like a lot of people, we were talking earlier, and what I've covered on my channel, this whole theme of revolution that's really spreading globally. I mean, you've been covering Sri Lanka and how they've been going after politicians, and now you got Ecuador, Panama, Argentina. It's like going one after the other, and a lot of people are like, well, we need to revolt, we need to have a revolution to restore things, and I personally just don't think that's the right way to go. I think, just what you said, you really just need to focus on your family and your friends and do what you can.
Violence is a Pandora's box. Once you open it, it's very, very difficult to close it. The American Revolution is like one of the most odd events in the world history. Like that we had this revolution and then we moved into a time of stability almost immediately after is basically unheard of in history. Usually when a country goes into revolution, it goes through cycles of revolution. It goes in through a long period of time, and usually the only time it comes out of that is through a dictatorship or a very strong-armed leader. So you look at the French Revolution, that's a perfect example. It rolled over and over and over again. Everyone kind of get rolled under until Napoleon came in and was able to kind of seize the reins and pull it together. You look at the revolutions in Russia, and just country after country after country, usually revolutions lead to a time, decades and decades of instability and violence that I would not wish on anyone.
Right.
And usually it comes out in tyranny. So it's like, usually you end up in a worse place than where you started, and you have this period of just awful tragedy. Yeah.
And I mean, just scripturally looking at some of the things of the Bible too, especially, when Jesus walked the earth, I always reminded people, the Jews were under foreign occupation, right? The Romans, they did not like the Romans. The Romans were like controlling their way of life, and they had rules against the Jews. And it's just so interesting, right? Because the Jews were they were expecting rather, some type of not a worldly Messiah, but someone like a king, a return of King David that would restore peace and liberty to Israel. And then when Jesus came, and especially when he died, they were really confused, but they were wondering why, when is he going to restore the kingdom? When is he going to fight for us? And quite the contrary in regards to the Roman oppression of the Jews. I reminded my viewers several videos ago, there was this one law that said that for a Roman soldier's morale, he could choose a Jew, like a Jewish man, and depose him to carry his gear for a mile.
Yeah.
And then, Jesus was like, if someone deposes you to walk with him 1 mile, walk 2. And I just always thought that was interesting, especially in the time that we're in, because we're not necessarily under foreign occupation right now. Some might say, we are, especially with the current leadership,
lizard people and stuff.
Yeah. So, but I mean, if you think about, a foreign nation, a lot of the drama right now is with China and, Biden's relationship there. But I mean, could you imagine if we were under foreign occupation and, they were deposing Americans or Christians, either or, to do things like that? A lot of the mentality today is no way, liberty, Constitution, and, we deserve to fight. But so it's always about bringing it back to the fact that, we're to be faith-based. We're to look back at the scriptures and see what Jesus says. There is a time to disobey leadership, particularly when it starts to go against our faith, and when they say that we can't preach the gospel or things like that. But there's other things, particularly with the revolutionary mindset, where it just doesn't end up well. And it didn't end up well for the Jews in 70 AD when they finally revolted. So with everything going on, one of the segments we wanted to talk about is, Steve always does a whole bunch of really good articles on what's happening around the world, and you're doing a lot, maybe two videos a day. I just wanted to pick your brain in terms of umbrella type view. What do you, I know we're not supposed to worry. Scripture says we're not supposed to worry, but where are your headlights on? Where are you focusing on? What do you see in terms of the sign of the times? Where are things going?
Yeah. I mean, I just see the best case scenario is we go into this stagflationary depression kind of. There's going to be there's consequences to the decisions we've made, which is printing money.
Yeah.
We've been printing money out of thin air with this idea that there is never going to be any consequence. And there will be consequence. The question is will we be able to bear up those consequences without any geopolitical strife and without any domestic strife? You know, if we all just sit down together and eat our vegetables and we go through a depressionary period to kind of burn off all that excess money, that is the best case scenario. And so people should be preparing for a depression. Where are your income streams? You know, are they dependable? Who are you working for? Can they really go through a depression? If they can't, trying to get into a good job that's going to walk you through this depression, I think is critical. Also having food supply in case you get laid off so that you can eat and having some money stocked up or some assets stocked up so you can keep making your house payments or your rental payments, just to make sure that you don't lose your vehicle, don't lose your house. So just cleaning house fiscally, I think, is very prudent at this point. But then on the bad side of things, if we go into domestic strife, or even if we go into an international, like a World War III type scenario, I think those are very real things that could happen on the future. And when that happens, you need to expect to not have electricity. You need to expect to not have water. I mean, here in America, we are extremely blessed that we have always had water in the last 70 years. We've always had electricity. We've always had all these services. You go to the grocery store and there's been food there. And I've traveled around the world enough that I've seen enough places, especially crises, that they didn't have those guarantees anymore. Yeah. In a war, a civil war, international war, first thing that goes down is the power grid. Second thing that goes down is the water system. And you go to the store and there just is very little options to eat and such like that. And having your own food supply, having thought through how you're going to make do without water from the city lines and how you're going to power what you need to power, or how you're going to get by without power, I think are questions that are prudent to ask. Yeah. We become so dependent and reliant upon systems that we have no control over. And I don't think that's wise. I think that you have this opportunity now in comfort to address some of those issues instead of getting all those extra lattes at Starbucks. Looking to what you can do to make build a small power system so you can power your cell phones and other electronics that are mission critical to you guys, like whether that's ham radios or computer or anything along those lines. So, and then of course water is just always hugely important, right?
Yeah, and always, I know there's a lot of people in various different financial circumstances, but going back to the faith-based thing, I did a video quite a while ago just talking about prepping in fear versus prepping in faith. Yeah. And I had told my subscribers, I've done a little bit of both. I know over the past, I've been doing this for probably 10 plus years. There are some purchases that I'm not proud of.
Sure.
And I have a pastor friend in Indiana, and he's the same way. He's like, oh, it's coming, and he did things, in a good spirit. Like, I'm going to prepare for my church, a long time ago, and now a lot of that stuff he can't really use, and so he gave it away to the poor and poor ministries and things like that. So I think individually, according to your own conscience, just make sure that you're not succumbing to fear, because there's a lot of that going on right now. It's a tense situation, but always just, especially talking to the Christian audience
prepare
here,
for apocalypse, but also prepare for things to be normal for the next 6 months or a year, because we all thought Y2K might blow up on us. We all thought, just event after event after event. We've all been through some events where this is it. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't it. Right. So could things hold together for the next 6 months? Another year? It's possible. Yeah. It looks increasingly less probable, but to not be diversified, I think where you're all in on prepping to the point where your current life is falling apart, your current relationships are falling apart, I think is just as imprudent, if not more imprudent, than not preparing at all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think you need to have this wise balance. We need to ask God for wisdom in things and not just foolishly react.
There was a while back, I remember I had mentioned on my channel something like, oh, I'm busy, I got to do this for my wife. Like, it's maybe like some big home improvement thing several years back. And there were people commenting like, why are you doing that? The world's ending. And I'm like, well, I still have to take care of my family and do these things. And, I've been thinking, there's a lot of, and we'll probably talk about this on your Poplar Preparedness channel as a topic, like the differences between being single and prepping and maybe having a family.
Yep.
But one of the things that I think of in my mind, and hopefully I'm not the only one out there, I think maybe there's some other people out there, but men like to be riding on that white steed and like coming to save the day, and a lot of people that have been prepping for so long and nothing's happened, like we're looking for vindication, like yeah we were right, like finally.
You see people that are kind of like that. They almost come across, especially the newbies, as like, you actually want apocalypse.
Yeah.
Like, and people are like, no. But there is that, I prepared so much for it that I kind of do want that vindication.
Right.
I do want to be able to see, I told you so.
Yeah, like a part. But I was thinking like about my family or just people's relationships out there. Like, we're like, well, one day, he or she is going to appreciate everything that I've done. But the thing is, if you've been at odds that whole time, mm-hmm. and your relationship is already rocky because of that, there's no amount of prepping that I think that we're going to have that is going to be quote unquote comfortable. I think it's going to be, if this all happens and it breaks down, I mean, it's going to be stressful.
Oh, yeah.
And, even if you've been at odds with certain family members about this, and even if, they're like, well, I guess he was right. I think there might even be such amount of stress, and there was such a rocky relationship from the beginning that, I mean, you might see family ties start to deteriorate, which that's one of the things that I've learned throughout prepping throughout the years is everyone's like, you can't do it by yourself, right? You got to have some form of community. And I've tried, like way back, even before I was saved, I tried to get engaged with, should I say it, militias, like just figuring out what they're about. I never actually joined one, but I went to some of their meet and greets and things like that. I've tried different prepper groups, and like none of them really stuck, especially when they're like strangers. And there was actually some bad characters in there as well. And so really, like, it's
if your most defining reason for connecting with people is prepping, I feel like that's an unhealthy thing.
And it was
because there's so many different motivations for prepping, right? Mm-hmm. When you went to those groups, they had all sorts of agendas and motivations.
Some were like, I'm going to take everything. I don't need to prep.
Personally, I think it's better to organize with people who have the same priorities and agendas that you have, and even if they're not all on board with prepping. Mm-hmm. So that's why I always push, connect with people at your church. Connect with people of faith, people who are hardworking, people who have a lot of the same values as you do, because you can bring them up to speed on the prepping side if you need to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And honestly, if it really comes down to that, prepping for them, so that because those are the people that you're going to be able to walk through crises with.
Yeah.
Not the people that have all the stuff and the cool toys. If they don't have the same values and purpose as you do, then you're not going to, I mean, that's like walking into marriage and just going based off of looks.
That's a good analogy.
Or walking into marriage based on how much money they have. Like, that's a stupid way of picking your spouse. Mm-hmm. You want to have people who share your values and your purpose. And if you don't know what your values are and your purpose is, you need to square that away first. Honestly, like that's why I keep asking the question to people who are prepping. I go, why are you prepping? Mm-hmm. What is the purpose? So I can survive. Survival is not a purpose. Survival is a means to an end.
Right.
or else your life really has no meaning. If your life has no meaning whatsoever, then yeah, you need to extend your meaningless life as long as possible. But even then, you kind of ask the question in the end, why?
Yeah.
Is your life actually impacting other people's lives for good? Or what effect are you going to have on the world before you leave it? Who's going to be different because you walked on this earth? And if that is your purpose, now you're going to ask yourself the question, if I starve to death before I can accomplish that purpose, or my family will, or the people that I'm trying to impact do, then can I achieve my purpose? And the answer is no.
Right.
So you want to prepare to that end. I think that's why that's one of the big themes of my channel is not just prep for yourselves, but prep for other people so that you can be a blessing to other people.
Yeah.
Whether it's you take in a family or whether you take in a couple individuals and try to help them through the crises, that I think will give meaning and purpose to your existence during that crisis.
Yeah. It's an evangelical type of tool to like you know, people that don't know the Lord and they need help. I mean, you've taken me in. I want to listen to what you have to say.
Suicide levels and crises go through the roof. People go, this is hard, and people will just give up.
And they already have.
If they don't have a purpose, if they don't have a reason to go through the tough times, people just kind of get to, that's why people with a family are more likely to make it through a crisis, is because there are people depending on them. But even then, sometimes they get to the point where it's like, I can't handle the stress that people are dependent upon me, and people choose the easy way out, and they leave their family unprotected, and that's people don't realize that when stress goes up to those levels, that historically people start to quit.
Yeah.
And I think that bringing one or two people through the crisis with you can be that purpose, or a family, or whatever, or giving some of the abundance of your garden to others in need, or helping other people start their gardens, or just having some kind of like purpose. I mean, obviously sharing the gospel with people and discipling people is a purpose for us Christians. But even as I look at people who are unsaved, you know, it's just like, well, what is your purpose? Like, why are you prepping? Like, why do you need to live?
And especially for the Christian too, like, if it gets as bad as like a lot of people were thinking it might, I mean, we were talking just about the financial system and just the US dollar being the world's reserve currency and just the state it's in. It's almost like designed to collapse. I mean, if it does, that's serious. You know, food might be very difficult to come by, and with what you have, you might have the flesh telling you like, no, they should have done their own thing. You should have done it. I'm keeping what's mine. But, you know, I think, you know, we need to be thinking through this and realize that even if we have stored, that's going to be a testing of faith. You know, I think, not to say we're giving everything away. Like, here's everything, take everything. Yeah. But I mean, I think there will be testings of faith to where, you know, you're gonna want to help people and deliver that gospel message and not be selfish. I'm sort of reminded of the story too in the Bible where, you know, Jesus feeds the so many thousand, the 5,000, 7,000, whatever, and you know, the one little boy only had this. Yeah. And he gave it all. He's like, here, you know, and he put it in the hands of Jesus. But, you know, like I said, don't have to give away everything, but I think, you know, we need to be mindful of these situations.
But there's that rebuke there too. You know, if you say, if you bless people, go and be filled. Yeah. It's this like, and you haven't fed them. Like, how can you ask God to do for them what you are completely unwilling to do for them? If you don't do what you can do for them, like, how insincere and how empty is that? Yeah. And then that's really what I biblically. And then I like to also, I've traveled to 49 countries now, and I particularly focused on going to ex-conflict zones and such like that, and I talked to a lot of people, and I've read a bazillion books on history. That's one of my main hobbies and I see in conflict zones, I see in these crises, people come together in community. And I know a lot of people are like, well, in the United States, it's going to be different because society is broken down so much. But the first thing people do when crisis hits is they start forming community. And the people who are the hermits, who are they stocked up things and they're just going to go hide out, those people do not fare well in crises. Because everyone comes together and they start looking at the hermit over there that's not participating in the community, and they start going, why is that person or that family not participating in the community? They start to view that outsider as an enemy or a threat. And eventually conflict ensues. And that's why I keep saying, it's like, you need to be part of the community that forms. You need to at least be, partially involved. And people just, they have this mindset of, I'm antisocial and I don't want to be part of anything now. And when things happen, I'm still going to be on the outside, and they better not trespass my property, or else, I'll bury them out in my front yard and stuff like that. And you hear all this posturing and talk, and it's just like, no, you're going to be hungry for community as well. And you need to either learn how to start getting along with other people, or you're going to have a really hard time getting through crises, because we need each other.
Yeah.
We need information. Where are you going to get your information if the grid goes down? Like community, by talking to people, hearing what's going on in your community. And you're not going to be so interested in what's happening over in California anymore, unless you're in California. You're going to be more interested in what's happening locally. What's happening 2 towns over, 1 town over. What's happening nearby? Because as stress levels go up, your area of focus shrinks. And we've already seen this recently. Back in like the early 2000s, everyone in America was very focused on what's happening in other countries, And recently, I think a lot of people have really stopped caring quite so much about what's happening internationally and are really focusing in on what's happening nationally. And I think that we're about to go into another shift where we're going to stop caring so much what's happening nationally. We're going to start focusing in on what's happening locally and statewide, because as stress goes up, you just can't handle all that.
Yeah.
You need to start focusing more and more on what's going to actually directly impact your life. And I find that in crisis situations, people's focuses really shrink in.
Yeah, and just the 24-hour news cycle that we're in, it's crazy. There's, internationally, right? It's like this country's starting to fall, that country's starting to fall. What's going to happen with, I'll use your terminology, the tiger country and the bear country, and what's going on with the cough. But then even within America, you've got all these situations like the race issues and the police issues, and it's just so much. What
can you and I really do about what's happening over in California, or Kenosha, or Syria, or these other places? It's like, and yet we feel this urge to be informed, but is it really going to impact us? I mean, I think we should be informed about those places, particularly so that we can see how things are happening and unfolding there, so that we can be prepared for the same kind of thing unfolding in our neighborhoods.
Right.
That's why I think that, like Kenosha and some of these other places that have really been hit by rioting and such like that, to see how that kind of went down, because that's how it's going to go down in U.S. cities around the country, probably. When food stops coming, or when power grids go out and everything like that. Look at what happened in Louisiana the other year, where people were stealing each other's gas cans. And crime just went through the roof because they didn't have power, they didn't have water. I mean, look at how things happen so that you can see how things could happen in your area. So, yeah.
Yep. And like you said, there's so many varieties of circumstances where all these fundamentals of living have been impacted. Just security in terms of like the riots, the water issue, energy. Energy's been one of the biggest things that honestly I don't think I was very well prepared for until I've been seeing a lot of things happening. So I sort of beefed up that area. But yeah, as much as you can do, I think we know that the trajectory of the world is not getting better. It's we got leadership all around the world that's not really making decisions in everyone's best interest. And so you focus on what you can control, and don't get too overly invested in the whole 24-hour news cycle going on around the world. But so we actually got a lot else to record. So, if you're tuning into this video, again, we're going to be doing at least maybe 2 or 3 videos on Steve's channels because you got such a wide variety. But go ahead and tune on in. So it's Poplar Preparedness on YouTube. There's Bold Faith Bible, and links will be in the description too. Bold Faith Bible on YouTube, and then we might do an iMissions video as well. Maybe not. We'll see what the time is like. Are you anywhere else? Do you do podcasts or website, or are you pretty much tapped out?
I'm tapped out with that.
Okay. But so go check it out over there. And thanks, Steve, for coming down. Hope you enjoyed your trip there, and it's always good to fellowship with you. And hope you especially tune in for some of his Bible studies. So thanks again, Steve. And
my pleasure.
Yep. Catch you later.